And because she made all those life changes when we did the 6-month check, I was shocked at how fast things improved. And she was like, I literally feel like a different person. She's like, I feel like you saved my life. Because she's like, I knew I couldn't keep living the way that I was living. I just didn't know what to do and what to really focus on that would be worth it. Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. How do I know if it's my cortisol that's causing an issue? How do I know it's really adrenal, insufficiency or adrenal fatigue? What are some of the things that I'm going to feel, and what are some potential things I can rule in or out to make sure I'm targeting the right thing? Well, I am so glad you asked. I'm Dr. Beth Westy, women's health and hormone expert here and host of the podcast, The Female Health Solution. We're going to talk all about adrenals today and some things you may be feeling. I'm going to focus right now on lower cortisol, but also note, I'll mention a few things about the opposite, about high cortisol levels. It's also really important to note that there is a big difference in high versus low cortisol and your adrenal function and your cortisol usage in your system. So, and Dutch test measures both of those things. Dutch test will measure your adrenal function and then how your body is utilizing your cortisol. Those are two different things. When you get a salivary cortisol, if you get a serum or blood test or saliva test for cortisol, all they're measuring is that one free cortisol, how your system is using cortisol at that moment in time. Through a urine test, we see the metabolized cortisol, which is the adrenal function. Shows it clear as day on a Dutch test. This is why I love Dutch tests so dang much, because it gives you the entire roadmap to your system and how it's functioning. So if you haven't had a Dutch test, want to look into it, go click that link. Make sure you look at this information to get a Dutch test for yourself. So let's talk about low cortisol. Now, there can be some really tough things about having low cortisol or just feeling like garbage in general, because there's a ton of overlap with other things. So I'm going to read off these things to you just so you realize, like, oh my gosh, yes, I was thinking this, or I was thinking maybe it's my thyroid, or I look up low cortisol and I look up low thyroid, and there's a ton of overlap in both of those things. Which one is it? What do I do? What do I target? How do I know? Etc. Of course, it's really tough to tell, right? Of course. But this is why we do specific testing. This is why we pinpoint exactly what's happening in your system. This is why we can get you functioning better and feeling better faster. This is why I want to shout it from the rooftops, and why I am so dang frustrated that a lot of times gals are at the end of their rope. They've already searched. They've already tried a ton of different things. They've seen a handful of other practitioners and tried other just blood testing to only not have a result at all, right? Because you're like, they're not doing a urine test. They're not looking and measuring the right things and actually giving you steps to move forward. And I'm going to say this as well. This is I'm never one to like bash other practitioners or how they do things or anything like that. But when we talk about functional health, the goal is to get your body working better, right? So that you don't need a ton of supplements all the time and a ton of things all the time, that you shift and change your lifestyle to manage and maybe include a few tools on a regular basis to maintain your healthy functioning, right? That's the goal. But to get there, oftentimes we have to go through a process, resetting things, supporting things, all of that stuff. Go through a process to get you there. Sometimes it's a couple of phases, sometimes it's 3 or 4 phases before we can get your system to a point where it can maintain. Right? I think about it like this. If you're, if you want to ride your bicycle, right, and you go to the garage and you're like, man, I haven't ridden my bike since last year. It's so nice today. I want to go for a bike ride, right? And you just hop on your bike, go for a ride, and you're like, okay, there's something wrong with my brakes. The gears are really dirty and the chain keeps slipping off and the tires are kind of flat. It's not going to be a great ride. But if all you're doing is saying, okay, well, we just need more air in the tires. We just need more air in the tires. Keep the air in the tires. Keep the air in the tires. But your brakes aren't working very well. Not going to be a great ride. You know what I mean? So there's a systematic approach to say, We're going to look at the entire thing, at the entire bicycle, look at all the systems, recognize issues with anything that has a problem, and work towards correcting that so it can function better on its own. Now, again, are there maintenance things where, hey, if you ride through the mud, I might want to clear out the chain so it doesn't gunk up the gears? For sure. But that's not a regular thing. If you're like, yeah, I'm just going to go for an easy ride down the road, you should be able to go around your neighborhood, come back, put your bike in the garage, go to bed, wake up the next day, and it should function just fine. Does that make sense? Like sometimes when people are like, oh, you're going to have to be on this stuff forever. Really? Why? You know what I mean? Or how can we get your system to function as best as it can so that you don't have to always rely on certain things? Now, are there things that I do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to make sure that my system functions as best it can? Yes. Right? I do saunas, I do dry brushing, I do lymphatic drainage, all of those lifestyle changes. I work on getting good sleep, all of that. Do I also take supplements? Yes. Do I take the same supplements every day, all year long? No. Because it depends on what I'm working on. It depends on what process I'm going through. It depends on what my goals are. It depends on what I'm struggling with, right? So if you have somebody to guide you through this process, you're going to get a completely different result. And instead of just being told, make sure there's air in your tires. Did you check the air in your tires? Oh, the bike ride isn't very good. Oh, you're struggling pedaling. It's really hard to pedal. Probably because you don't have air in your tires. Oh, you checked the tires? Yeah, you should probably check them again. Oh, are you sure? Are you sure you're putting air in the tires? I'm not sure that you're doing it right then. Maybe you should take it to a professional for that. And you're like, I know how to put air in a bike tire. Like, come on. Right? It can be really frustrating when you go in again and again and you're saying, I'm really tired. Can I get a full thyroid panel? Oh, I'm really tired. I feel really stressed. And they're like, just try some yoga. Okay. Not that yoga's bad. But that's not a solution for everybody. And for a lot of women, what I realize day in and day out, when I go through a Dutch test with someone, what they realize is they all of a sudden will see black and white numbers don't lie, just how severe the issue is. Time and time again, the women that I work with, and I'm just saying this as a generality, this isn't everybody, right? This isn't everybody. But I oftentimes will, by the women, they struggle, right? They push through things, and you push through things for so long, or you're like, yeah, I tried to go in, I went to a couple of appointments last year, or I did this, that, the other, and I tried this and this, and da, 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 da. And I got so frustrated that I just gave up, right? Or I didn't get a solution, or maybe I am being a baby, or they said it's in my head. Maybe it is in my head. I don't know, right? And you're trying all of these different things, and you're trying to go through this different process. So by the time you find out what a Dutch test is and then decide to actually take it and then go through the results from like, yeah, this is bad. This is really below range. I'm not kidding. I went through this last week with a gal where I was like, and this gal, again, she's highly educated, master's degree, has a fantastic job, very, like, I want to say high powered gal, right? She's a girl boss. She's got a family. She volunteers. You know what I mean? Like, she is a go-getter. She's type A, very diligent, does the things, et cetera, right? And she's like, yeah, I just, the last doc I said, the last doc I saw said that I just needed to, keep taking the anxiety medication, but it hasn't been working for me. And I get all these side effects, and that I just need to be less stressed. And she's like, I don't even know what that means anymore at this point. And I said, listen, I understand about being less stressed, but I was like, your levels are on the floor. So your body's like crapped out, essentially. It's toast right now. It's not about being less stressed. Your system can't function with these numbers this low. And getting the clarity on that, understanding really where you are. If you feel lost, right? If you feel lost, you're in the woods and you're lost and you're trying to figure out how to get out of the woods, right? Say you're hiking. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but say you're hiking in a big wooded area and you're unfamiliar with the trails, and you go in and there's no one else there, and there's these trails that split off in different directions, and you're like, okay, I think from the map that I looked at the beginning, if I just keep going left, it circles around, blah blah blah. But at one point you realize, like, oh, there's a tree down. Is that the trail or not? Or maybe it got overgrown, or maybe they didn't update the map from the tree that fell down or something. I'm not sure. I won't bother. This is a clear path. I'm going to keep going on this one. And then all of a sudden you realize, I've been lost in the woods for 2 hours and I'm not sure how to get out. Right? What are your options? What are you supposed to do? You don't have a map. And if someone comes up to you and says, here's a map, and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have a map. This is super. I can figure this out. Can you? What if the map is for like downtown Dallas, Texas? And you're not in downtown Dallas, right? It's a road map. You're like, I'm in the woods. This doesn't help, right? You have to figure out exactly where you are. You have to have somebody bring you the correct map and say, this is the map of the woods, and you're here. And the trail is supposed to be over here. So we have to navigate there and then work our way out of the woods. That's the most important thing. So that's why doing this testing is so important. Stop wasting your time. Time and time again, women say, oh my gosh, this is so helpful. I like understanding what the Dutch test says is so helpful. And I wish I would have done this a year ago. I wish I would have done this 6 months ago. I wish I wouldn't have waited. I wish I would have found this 2 years ago. So if you're finding this, if you're listening to this, stop waiting. All right, let's get into the symptoms and stuff. I'm going to read this stuff off because I want you to realize I have like the list here. I have a list here of the things when we talk about low cortisol, all the different symptoms that can come about from it. You can have fatigue and burnout, right? This is more than just, oh, I feel a little tired. This is like physical exhaustion. Like you can force yourself to do things, but it can feel like you're white knuckling through the day, right? That's terrible. And then burnout is just like if you have to rest to just keep going, like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired in the afternoons. I have to sit down. I have to rest for a second to even be able to function the rest of the day. But it's not like resting really rejuvenates you, right? You're not like, oh, I rested. Oh, I'm ready to go. Fresh as a daisy. Yay. No, you're like, I rested because I absolutely couldn't keep going. And I don't feel that much more energized, really. I can just limp along through the rest of the day. That's not normal, by the way. That is 100% not normal to feel like that. Low mood, low motivation. These are all parts of this low cortisol. Having a really low mood, feeling really blah, feeling really down. Feeling like, again, I had someone explain it to me. She was like, I just feel overcast. She's like, I used to be a sunshine person, very positive, very upbeat, and I feel completely overcast. The sun never breaks through the clouds. Yeah. Low motivation. It's so hard to do things. And then extra things like build up around the house. You have a list of things you want to do, all of that stuff. Low libido, not having a libido, not having any sex drive at all. The most common thing I hear from women is they're like, I love my husband. He's a wonderful man. Wonderful person. I love my partner. I don't want him to touch me. I have no drive. And I feel so bad because like he still wants me after all these years and I just don't want to. And I want to, but I can't make my body respond. We'll talk about that. Sleep apnea. And if you're thinking, if you're so exhausted though, why would you have sleep apnea issues? Because your body can't actually rest properly and recuperate at night. Orthostatic hypotension. This is a low cortisol thing. Orthostatic hypotension. What does that mean? That means that you like stand up too fast and get kind of dizzy. Like sometimes you can have heart palpitation things where like your heart beats real quick for a second and you're like, whoa, what is this? Yeah. Goes along with low cortisol. And then feeling dizzy, and again, this can be related to getting up too fast, but it can also be, oh, I've been on my feet too long. I feel like weakness. Sometimes people do faint, but that's not as common from what I've seen. It's just like that weakness or feeling, or like, oh my gosh, I'm overexerting myself too much. Like, oof, I got to sit down, or oof, I'm getting tunnel vision or something like that. Low cortisol. Now, what could these other things, like these are all things that can be, and you don't have to have all of them to have low cortisol. You can have a special combination of those things. What other things do we want to check on to rule out? Great question. I love you. I'm so glad you asked. Low testosterone, right? Low testosterone can cause these things. Thyroid, right? Low DHEA or androgens, low estrogen, right? Having some type of sleep dysregulation, having a neurotransmitter deficiency, gut issues, having high histamine. Yep. Blood sugar dysregulation, electrolyte imbalance. Isn't this nuts? Right? And then dehydration. That was the other thing that I wanted to mention. Dehydration can also influence some of these things. And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, does Dutch test measure a lot of these things? It sure does. This is why when I go over a Dutch test with someone, I'm able to look at this and say, okay, your nutrient levels look fantastic. You are not dehydrated at all. Your testosterone looks fabulous. Your estrogen looks fabulous. Your neurotransmitters are low and you have low cortisol. So both of those things are going to go into that mood dysregulation, blah, 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 blah. But that fatigue and everything else and low libido, since your testosterone is fantastic, that's going to be cortisol. What I have seen recently, and this is just a trend I've seen recently in Dutch testing, when women mark down, I have a low libido and I just am struggling with it. And I want this to improve because it's impacting my relationship. And again, they're like, I want to be intimate with my partner. My body is so tired. What the heck? And they're thinking, is it my testosterone? And we look and I'm like, nope, it's your cortisol. And lo and behold, we start working on cortisols and it starts to improve libido. Now, when we talk about improving this and turning things around, it does depend on other things and other factors. Focusing on sleep regulation, is that important? Yes. Focusing on your gut health? Yes. Focusing on your nutrition and all of that stuff? Yes. Right? It's not just one thing. I'm never going to just give you a supplement and say, this is going to fix it. See you later. No, like I talked about, there's a process to go through. There is identifying what the issue is and then looking at everything else that's impacted in your entire system, because nothing works alone. So it's really essential that you look at everything else and then that we create a timeline and a path to go down. What are we going to start with? What are we going to make sure that we're targeting? Are there nutrient deficiencies to work on? Do we have to work on neurotransmitter production? Where are those neurotransmitters created? Too. Some neurotransmitters like dopamine is mainly made in the brain. Some neurotransmitters like serotonin is mainly made in the gut. What's your gut health like? All these things matter. All these things matter so much. So it's essential that we're targeting the right thing for you, taking you through this process, getting your system to function better along the way. Now, how long does this take? It depends. It depends on the person. It depends on your health history. It depends on your genetics. It depends on your age. It depends on your, lifestyle. I have had gals that it has taken twice as long as I anticipated it would take for things to turn around, because, they had other circumstances occur that were just out of the control. I had a gal who we were on track, we were going along and things were starting to improve after like a couple of months of working together. And she was like, this is great. She completely plateaued. And I was like, oh, okay. Cause it's frustrating, but I'm like, I totally understand. Her daughter, who had just had a baby, was left by her significant other. So her mom, it was the mom I was working with, right? So she took in her daughter and the new baby into her home. And she's like, I've lived alone for a long time. I don't have a really big house, blah, blah, blah. So when the baby cries in the middle of the night, it wakes me up. And so she went from being in total control of her environment, like waking up, going to work, having all this stuff, like having to her daughter having a baby. And she was real excited about it. Then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, the daughter and the baby are living with her. And she was like, I'm so glad to be there for my daughter and to open my home and everything else. But she's like, I can tell that my lack of sleep now is really impacting my process. And I was like, yeah. I mean, again, we're still going to do stuff and you can still make progress. It's just not going to be as fast as it was at the beginning because you were sleeping through the night and now you're getting woken up by a newborn, which, and she's like, yeah, I know, I'm trying things, she's trying earplugs and a fan and all this stuff. And, but she's like, I also am helping out because my daughter's now a single mom, da, 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 da. Right. So life circumstance through no fault of her own, right? It's just, and she's like, I'm going to help my daughter, of course. So it took longer, right? Okay. I've also had other gals that things turned around way faster. I had a gal, her levels were so bad. I was like, okay, maybe in 6 months we'll get at least 50% there. I was like, that's, shooting for the moon here. That's what we're doing, hopefully, right? We did a recheck at 6 months. Her numbers were incredible. Here's the difference of what she did. Now, she had a really stressful job. Incredibly stressful job. She was not eating well, all this stuff. When she saw her Dutch test, it shook her to her core and she went all in. She went all in shifting and changing things around. She took a leave of absence from her work. And then for a whole month to start to regulate her sleep and everything else. Then when she went back to work, she only worked part-time. Yep. And didn't take on certain projects that were very stressful for her. She was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I cannot keep existing like this. And her work let her, I'm using air quotes, let her do this because they were like, we value you so much and you have gone above and beyond for so long for us. We don't want to lose you as an employee. So please take whatever time you need and please come back. And so she went through this process of really dedicating time to herself where she did regular yoga, did regular walks, changed her workouts to really be more rejuvenating than destructive. Like she was doing this, like it wasn't CrossFit, but it was something else that was very similar-ish and really high intensity. And then doing extra cardio after her workouts. And I was like, why? And she's like, because I really want to lose belly fat. And that's what my trainer told me. I'm like, that doesn't work like that. Because your body's freaking out. It's not going to have a good cortisol response right now. No way, no how. Anyway, so she changed her nutrition. She started buying organic and making her meals at home. Again, she went from working, I'm not kidding, like 65, 70 hours a week to full, like a sabbatical for a whole month and then went back part-time, which her part-time was like still 30 hours a week, right? But it was still like less than half of the amount of hours as she was working before. And then she started to really change everything, right? So her sleep, she went from sleeping 5 hours a night to sleeping 8 or 9 hours a night. And sleeping solid, right? She went from barely eating anything in the morning to eating really nutrient rich, like high protein breakfasts within an hour of waking and then protein pacing throughout the day. She went from being stressed from the second she got up and her eyes popped open to giving herself time and going outside and grounding herself and getting out in nature, right? Hardcore workouts to walks and yoga and some strength training to maintain her muscle. She started doing deep breathing exercises and meditative practices, along with a specific supplement regimen and everything else tailored for her. And because she made all those life changes when we did the 6-month check, I was shocked at how fast things improved. And she was like, I literally feel like a different person. She's like, I feel like you saved my life. Because she's like, I knew I couldn't keep living the way that I was living. I just didn't know what to do and what to really focus on that would be worth it. She would try and go away for a weekend, or she'd try and travel for fun and all this other stuff. And when we were talking about it, she was like, yeah, maybe I should travel more. I was like, do you love travel? And she's like, well, I like being at the beach. And again, when we talked about it, she was like, it ended up being that travel was really stressful for her. So I was like, why don't you just like take time at home? You don't have to go anywhere to create like a sanctuary for yourself to let your nervous system reset. So it's all these things. So there's more than one thing that goes into this with your results, right? And these are all the things that we talk about. We talk about your lifestyle that impacts your function. We talk about your nutrition that impacts your function, exercise that impacts your function, and any type of extras, tools, supplementation, things like that. Specific therapies for you to invest in for your time that are actually going to help you. That's the difference, right? Again, why would you, for somebody to say, oh yeah, I should I do a lot of dry brushing? It's like, well, it depends. Do you have a lot of lymphatic drainage issues or not? Right? Or should you start with like nervous system dysregulation? So it's helpful to have that type of specific guidance so that you can start doing things that are actually making an impact right away. And how do we know what to do? Dutch test. Dutch test. I'm going to really quick talk about high cortisol because some of the things that are very similar with low cortisol also cross over into high cortisol. Sometimes people get really fatigued, but they aren't fatigued kind of all day. They'll get this high anxiety kind of panic. And then it's like you burn out and then crash. So that fatigue is so intense because it's such a vast difference from how highly functioning you were before. But a lot of people with high cortisol think that that's really good. Oh, I'm getting so much done. I'm doing all these things. That's a good thing. Look at me go. That's fantastic. That's really positive. And it's only bad when I crash because I can't keep doing things. No, your system can't function anymore. And you shouldn't be revved at this really high rate all the time. Woo! Insomnia, weight gain, brain fog, inflammation, more blood sugar dysregulation, hair loss, all those things. And again, what things do we need to look at? What is that compared to? Very similar things. You have to check testosterones, other androgens, DHEAs, estrogens, nutrient levels, neurotransmitter levels, gut health, dehydration, all that stuff. Same thing. We have to rule things in and out to target the right thing for you. So that's why it's so beneficial to get a Dutch test. That's why it's so beneficial because you can list off some symptoms and be like, oh, I have some of this, but some of this. Which one is it? Without knowing, you're targeting the complete wrong thing. And again, this is why I just went through this. I just talked about this on my Instagram stories where I looked at a Dutch test and this gal was like, oh, I've had this for this many years. Like she marked it down and she's like, I've been taking this supplement. And I'm like, oh my God, stop taking this supplement immediately. Like I had to message her right away before she even scheduled her consult. Cause I'm like, this is like, you're taking the wrong thing. It's gas on a fire. It matters. It really does matter what you're doing. So again, it's the same thing as if you're lost in the woods, somebody gives you a map but if they're like, yeah, here's this map. Oh, this is the map for the woods. And you're like, okay, great. But they give you the map upside down. You're going to follow this path, farther into the woods, get more and more lost. That's why it's so important to actually get a Dutch test, get the right map for your system. So we know exactly on that map, where are you and where do you want to be? And then we map out the exact path to get there. So, all right, that's what I got for you guys today. I know sorry, I kind of talked a long time. I love talking about Dutch tests though. It's so helpful. It's so helpful to have this content and information available. And adrenals is one thing a lot of people have questions on because it can be confusing. Because you can have anxiety and feel fatigued. Is it high cortisol? Is it low cortisol? How do we know? Dutch test. So make sure that you are following. Make sure you share this with anybody that you think that, oh my gosh, we were just talking about stress or so-and-so was mentioning this. This is how this information gets out, right? Share it with other women. Post it on your social media. Say, hey, I found this to be really helpful. and then make sure you're clicking the link, checking out Dutch test. There are different types of Dutch tests, so we have you fill something out so that we can send the correct Dutch test to you, and then we go from there. Take the Dutch test, the lab gets your results, we go over it, and then we talk about the path to get you back to your healthiest self. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.